It's November 8, 1895, in Würzburg, Germany, an ordinary Friday evening. A 50-year-old physics professor named Wilhelm Röntgen is alone in his lab, running an experiment he's run 100 times before. He has no idea he's about to make one of the biggest accidental discoveries in the history of science. Meet Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, a meticulous, somewhat obsessive physics professor who rarely spoke about his work, even to his own students. That night, he was investigating something scientists were already fascinated by: strange glowing tubes called cathode ray tubes. Nobody expected what he'd stumble onto next. Cathode ray tubes were the trendy new toy of 1890s physics, glass tubes where electricity shot invisible particles across a vacuum. Dozens of scientists across Europe were poking at them, trying to understand what these mysterious rays actually were. Röntgen just wanted to double-check one small detail other researchers had reported. To make sure no stray light was leaking out, Röntgen wrapped his cathode ray tube completely in black cardboard and switched off every light in the room. This was a routine safety check, the kind of boring, careful step good scientists do 1,000 times. This time, it revealed something nobody had ever seen. Across the room, completely separate from the covered tube, sat a screen coated in a chemical called barium platinocyanide. It shouldn't have reacted to anything. The tube was sealed, the room was pitch dark. But it started glowing a faint, ghostly green, as if by magic. Röntgen froze. Whatever was coming out of that tube wasn't light. Light doesn't pass through thick black cardboard. Something completely invisible was traveling straight through solid matter and lighting up a screen from across the room. He had absolutely no idea what it was. For hours, Röntgen grabbed anything within reach: books, wood, sheets of paper, and held them in the path of these mystery rays. Almost everything let the rays through as if it weren't there. Only dense materials like metal managed to stop them completely. Here's the science behind it. X-rays are electromagnetic radiation, just like visible light or radio waves, but with an incredibly short wavelength, thousands of times tighter than the light your eyes can see. That short wavelength is exactly what lets them slip through skin, paper, and wood, while denser material like bone or metal still blocks them. Then Röntgen tried the boldest test yet. He held his own hand directly between the tube and the screen. And there it was, the shadowy outline of his own bones, floating on the glowing screen, with the soft flesh around them barely visible at all. He was looking straight through his own hand. Not knowing what on earth he'd found, Röntgen borrowed a symbol straight out of algebra class. In math, X stands for an unknown value, so he called his discovery X-rays. The name was only ever meant to be temporary. It stuck for over 100 years. What happened next says everything about Röntgen's character. Instead of announcing his discovery immediately, he locked himself away and spent 7 straight weeks testing, retesting, and trying to break his own results. Often eating and sleeping right there in the lab. He told almost nobody. Not his colleagues, not his students, and barely even his wife, Anna Bertha. She knew only that her husband had vanished into the laboratory every night, working on something he refused to explain until he was completely sure of it. By late December, Röntgen was confident enough in his results to try something bigger than a coin or a book. He needed a living human hand, and he asked the one person he trusted completely, his wife, Anna Bertha. On December 22, 1895, Anna Bertha placed her hand under the beam for about 15 minutes, perfectly still. What developed on the photographic plate became one of the most famous images in the history of science. The bones of her hand, clear as day, with her wedding ring hovering solid and opaque above her ghostly finger. According to legend, when Anna Bertha saw the image, her own skeleton staring back at her, she was so unsettled that she said, "I have seen my death. It's easy to understand why." No human being had ever looked at their own bones while still alive. Every part of that photograph told a different story. Soft tissue barely showed up because the rays sailed straight through. Bone, being denser, soaked up much more of the radiation and appeared clearly. And the metal ring blocked the rays entirely, standing out as a solid, bright shape. In a strange sense, that single glowing photograph was the world's very first radiology report, a picture of the inside of a living human body, taken without a single cut. Nothing like it had ever existed before December 22, 1895. Röntgen knew this couldn't stay secret much longer. He rushed to finish his paper, titled On a New Kind of Rays, and submitted it to the Würzburg Physical Medical Society on December 28, just 6 days after photographing his wife's hand. Quick pause. If this breakdown is helping you, take a second to hit like and subscribe. It genuinely takes a lot of effort to make videos like this, and your support keeps them coming. Once the paper was out, things moved almost impossibly fast for 1895. Newspapers across Europe picked up the story within days, and it crossed the Atlantic to American papers within weeks. This was viral news, more than a century before the internet existed. What made this story spread so fast wasn't just the science, it was the spectacle. Here was a technology that let ordinary people see their own skeletons. Public demonstrations popped up in city halls and department stores, and within months, the whole world was gripped by what newspapers called X-ray mania. Businesses raced to get in on the trend. Shoe shops installed X-ray machines so customers could see how their shoes fit their bones. Fairground booths charged admission to look at your own skeleton. It was treated less like serious science and more like a magic trick everyone wanted to try. In the rush of excitement, plenty of nonsense got mixed in with the real science. Some newspapers speculated that X-rays might photograph a person's thoughts, or even their soul. In reality, X-rays are simply electromagnetic radiation, the same family as visible light, just with a much shorter wavelength. The very same technology lived a strange double life. In hospitals, doctors used it for genuinely life-changing work. One of the earliest documented cases involved locating a sewing needle lodged inside a ballet dancer's foot. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, the exact same rays were pure fairground entertainment. Here's the part that still surprises people. Röntgen could have made an absolute fortune. Instead, he refused to patent X-rays at all, insisting the discovery belonged to humanity, not to him. In 1901, he received the very first Nobel Prize ever awarded in physics, and quietly donated the prize money to his university. But this exciting new technology had a dark side that nobody could see coming, quite literally. In 1895, not a single person on Earth understood that repeated exposure to these rays could quietly damage living tissue over time. Early X-ray operators worked barehanded, testing tube output on their own skin, day after day with zero protective equipment. Over years, that exposure quietly added up, leading to painful skin burns, hair loss, and, in the worst cases, cancer. One of the clearest warnings came from Clarence Daly, an assistant to the famous inventor Thomas Edison. Daly spent years testing X-ray tubes on his own hands to demonstrate them publicly. He developed severe burns that turned into cancer, and in 1904, he became one of the first known people to die from radiation exposure. It took the scientific community decades to catch up with the danger. Protective lead aprons and gloves only became standard practice in the 1920s, and it wasn't until 1928 that the first international guidelines for radiation safety were formally established. The story of X-rays carries a lesson that still applies to every powerful new technology since excitement can move faster than understanding. It took real harm and real loss before the world learned to handle this discovery responsibly. From that one accidental glow in a darkened German lab, an entire century of scientific breakthroughs followed. X-rays helped scientists map the structure of crystals, played a crucial role in revealing the double helix structure of DNA, and eventually evolved into the CT scanners that give doctors full 3D views of the body. Walk into almost any hospital today, and you'll find X-ray machines checking for broken bones, pneumonia, and dental problems, often within minutes. The same basic physics Röntgen stumbled onto by accident is still quietly saving lives, every single day all around the world. Today, that single 1895 discovery quietly touches an enormous range of everyday life. It's in the hospital scanning your chest, at the airport scanning your bag, on the factory floor checking for cracks in metal, and in research labs still unlocking the structure of molecules. Maybe the most human part of this whole story is this. Röntgen wasn't hunting for a Nobel Prize or trying to invent modern medicine. He was doing a routine check, noticed something that shouldn't have happened, and simply refused to shrug it off. One glow in a dark room. One professor who refused to look away. That's really all it took to change the course of medicine forever. And it all started with a Friday evening in Würzburg that was supposed to be perfectly ordinary. So next time you see an X-ray on a hospital wall, remember how it began. A total accident, a photograph of one man's wife, and a scientist generous enough to give the whole discovery away for free. Here are the key references and sources for this video. Thanks so much for watching. If this helped, like the video and subscribe for more clear, simple explainers, and I'll see you in the next one.